Hi, it's John Kelly. In this module, we are going to discuss file review and review notes. And as always, we want to be efficient and effective and follow professional standards and document the work we have done properly. Now, I think file review and review notes are probably the biggest source of inefficiency in auditing. And I'm going to go out on a limb a little bit, and I'm going to say that all review notes are either a failure of supervision or a failure of planning. And I'm talking here to the people writing review notes. If you are raising a review note a couple of weeks after the audit's been done, that means that you didn't supervise the staff properly or the audit was not properly planned. Now, I will exclude any note made and cleared during field work because that's part of the proper supervision of staff. And if someone hasn't done what they're supposed to do and you've caught that and corrected that during field work, well, that's fine. But making an industry out of writing and clearing review notes long after the audit is complete is either a failure of supervision or a failure of planning, in my opinion. And worse, review notes annoy staff. In public practice, probably the only thing worse than review notes, or maybe it's tied, is filling out a timesheet. Filling out a timesheet and clearing review queries are two really annoying things, and they're also infuriating and frustrating and inefficient, and they make staff generally mad. Now, of course, review notes are necessary. Professional standards say that the work of less experienced staff is reviewed by more experienced people. So we do have to review the file, and there are requirements to review the file. Now, the requirements in professional standards for supervision are you have to track the engagement as it progresses, and that I can't imagine how you do that successfully other than in real time. You have to consider the team competence and capabilities, and of course, but that better be done in planning before the audit starts, because if you start an audit with a team that doesn't have the necessary competence or capabilities, it's way too late. Making sure that the team has enough time. Have we budgeted enough time for the team to properly do the audit? Again, that has to be done during planning. Does the team understand the instructions? And again, we're supposed to write clear instructions for the staff as part of the planning process, making sure that they're understanding them as the audit is underway. That has to be done real time. So that's either ahead of time or real time. More things on supervision is the work done in accordance with the plan, again, real time. Addressing significant matters as they arise and identifying matters for consultation. Well, if those occur, and depending on the size and complexity of the audit, neither of those things may happen. In a small or medium-sized audit, that may never happen. In a larger audit, in a public company audit, well, those things could happen, and they really need to be dealt with right away and promptly. And then if something happens or something needs consultation, we need to modify our approach appropriately, and that also has to be done in real time. File review, professional standards tell us that we're trying to make sure that the work is done in accordance with standards, and that should be in the audit program and best done in real time. That significant matters are noted, and it would be nice if our documentation method helped us by prompting us if we had a checklist that said, have we documented and noted any significant matters in this section? Consultation done and documented as needed, and often not, but again, useful to have a checklist step to remind us. And have we revised the nature, timing, and extent of audit procedures? Of course we should, and again, useful to have a checklist step to remind us and help us document it that we thought about it and we've done it. Other things for review, and these things are just conclusions, that the work we have done supports the conclusions and is properly documented, that the evidence obtained is sufficient and appropriate, and the objectives of procedures are achieved. These are all things that are conclusions of review, and we need to have a checklist step to remind us and probably to help us document our conclusion. I have concluded that the work supports the conclusions and is properly documented, and you sign off a checklist step. It reminds you and serves as a form of documentation. Now, another reminder planning is really important, and standards assume that the work has been well planned, and that review then is just checking that this has been done. Other conclusions that we need to come to, we can be reminded by a checklist, and it has to be real time to be efficient. Now, some say review queries are a great learning experience. I would like anyone listening to this to think back to the day when they were clearing review queries, and you will probably go, I didn't learn anything from that. Now, maybe if it's done real time in the field, maybe that then helps people learn because it's prompt and it's reinforced, and they've done it one way and they've been quickly told, no, do it another. So maybe then that's okay. But if it's a couple of weeks later and you're getting a review query about something, all that does is annoy you, and it's not a learning experience. It's a waste of time. It upsets staff, and it's a really, really bad way to do training. So what should have happened in planning, and what do professional standards tell us? Well, the partner and key team members, not everyone, and maybe only the partner, depending on the size of the audit, maybe only the partner needs to be involved in planning. There is discussion with others as needed, and it may or may not be needed, and that planning will continue through the audit as new information emerges. Now, hopefully in a smaller audit, you can make sure that that doesn't happen, and you can do your planning towards the end of the year so that nothing new is going to happen. But we always have to be alert for that, and it could happen that something comes up during the audit that we just hadn't anticipated, and that's fine. We just need to deal with it. But it's best by far if planning is mostly done before the fieldwork starts. Now, things that are supposed to be included in planning as specified by professional standards: planned risk assessment procedures. We have to think about fraud and error. 240 tells us that we think about fraud, and 315 tells us that we think about fraud and error material misstatement. So we kind of think about it twice or once, depending on how you want to document that. You've got to document and include the nature, timing, and extent of further audit procedures, which, in other words, you have to have an audit program. If you don't have an audit program, if you haven't listed the steps that staff are supposed to do at the end of planning, you're going to have a mess during the audit. And then you have to tell staff not involved in the planning discussion, because everyone does not have to be involved in the planning discussion, what they should do. And that, again, presumably is the audit program, because you've specified, in response to the risk of material misstatement that you've identified, what you want done to address that. So, I'll say it again, other than review notes done in the field and cleared in the field, they are either a failure of supervision or a failure of planning. And failure of supervision: staff don't understand the planned procedures. Staff haven't followed the planned procedures. And if review notes are being raised about this after the fact, that's inefficient, demotivational. Think about how bad you're going to feel if 3 weeks later you were told that something you were trying really hard to do right, you weren't, and the reason you didn't know how to do it right was the senior or the manager wasn't there to answer your questions. That's a failure of supervision, and it's demotivational. The other thing that we should worry about if you're a partner or a manager, if staff don't understand what they're supposed to be doing because you're not properly supervising them, you can end up with a messed up audit, and then you have to go back to the field and spend more time and be inefficient. Don't do that. Failure of planning: any open-ended question is wrong. If you're asking an open-ended question, the partner or the manager is asking an open-ended question. How are the junior staff to know if the partner or manager does not know? How could that possibly occur? And why does the partner not know? So that's clearly any open-ended question, open-ended review note is a failure of planning. So let's look at some examples. One of my favorites: why have revenues gone up? Now that's an open-ended question, so it's wrong. And further, it's something the partner should know about or have noticed during planning, because if revenues have gone up a lot, it could be a risk of material misstatement. Now, if revenues have gone up a lot because the partner knows that last year we went on a big marketing campaign, and this year the marketing campaign has shown great results and sales are up and everything's good, well, then that's not a risk of material misstatement. That's expected, and that's what we would have expected to happen. But in some area, revenues are suddenly far in excess of what they were last year and what we would have expected them to be. That could be a significant risk of material misstatement. Something could be wrong. There could be an error. It could be fraud. Don't know. But if that's something the partner hasn't noticed and hasn't put procedures in the audit program to address, this is way late. So this has to be something that's dealt with by senior staff when planning. Otherwise, there's a real risk for a badly done audit. And how would you expect the staff person to know, or why would you expect them to even have found that out? Because they were not directed to it in the audit program. So the staff are going to be upset. So that's a bad way to do file review. Why were so few cutoff items tested? Well, another open-ended question, and the staff, depending on how humorous they want to be, they might say, well, the audit program said I was to test 5, so I did. Or they might say, well, the audit program was unclear, so I picked 5. That is poor planning. The audit program should have specified and detailed what cutoff testing should have been done, and the partner or manager shouldn't be asking open-ended questions after the audit's complete. Where is the bank confirmation? Another nice review question. Now maybe I can excuse that and say, well, that's really an open item, and maybe the staff person should have left a note on the file that said, you know, the audit's all done except the bank confirmation's not back yet. And then that query wouldn't have been raised. But alternatively, it could be bad planning. Why do we need a bank confirmation? Why did we send one out? Did we assess the risk of material misstatement of the existence of cash as being high, and therefore we needed a bank confirmation? If we didn't, we don't need a confirmation. Or did we say, well, you know, the client always messes up the allocation of principal and interest and sometimes expenses the whole thing, so we're never quite sure what the loan balance is at year end? If that's the case, and we decided a bank confirmation was necessary, and the audit's finished, and we don't have it back yet, and when we get it, we're going to go to the client and say, hey, you know, we finished the audit 2 weeks ago, but we've now got the bank confirmation, and we see that, as usual, you've got the balance for the loan wrong. We have to come back and spend another week figuring that out. That's also really, really bad planning, and it's going to make the client mad, and it's going to make staff mad, and they're busy, and how do we find the time for them to get back? So if we really did need a bank confirmation because there was a risk of material misstatement that it was addressing, why didn't we send it sooner? Why didn't we send it immediately after year end so that we'd get it back, have it in our hands when the audit started, so that we could then address this significant risk of material misstatement that we were worried about while the audit was underway? Another one of my favorites, reference the bank balance on A1/1 to the confirmation on A3-1. Really? Really? Do you remember what you felt like when you got queries like this? Wouldn't it be simpler if the reviewer had done that themselves? So this is something that's just designed to annoy staff. If there's one reference that you, the reviewer, think is missing, just do it yourself. If you, in the field, are reviewing a new person's section and you find that they just haven't referenced it at all, well, maybe there's a learning thing that needs to occur, and you maybe need to sit with that person and say, don't you remember what we talked about in firm training about firm standards for referencing? And let me show you how to do that. And then please take this whole section. I don't want to write any queries. It's going to take too much time, and index it properly. And then once you've done that, I'll review it. The other thing is some reviewers just love writing queries, and they spend hours and hours and hours coming up with, well, I'll call them stupid. How many of you refer to review queries as stupid review queries? Probably shouldn't say that, but it's a reviewer power play. I'm just going to show you how smart I am reviewing the file and how many picky little review queries I can raise. What a waste of time. So when you're writing review notes, I'd like you all to consider the impact on staff. They will always take review notes as criticism. And the smarter the staff, the more likely they are to realize if it's the reviewer or the partner to blame, because the reviewer or partner should have known about this ahead of time and they'll get mad. Or they'll realize that it's a stupid query and they'll get mad. So think carefully about every query you write. And good staff want to improve and get things done right. So if you are reviewing the work nicely and promptly and in the field and supportively, they're going to appreciate it. If your review queries are sensible and the person looks saying, oh, yeah, I should have, oh, yes, you're right, I don't know how to index a file, or, oh, I should have done this, or I forgot to do that, thanks for pointing that out. They're going to be happy, they're going to be satisfied with their work once it's done. It's done and cleared in the field, and they'll have a positive impact on staff if you do it right. So my challenge to those of you who are writing review notes is you should think of every review note you write as your failure. It's your failure in supervision. It's your failure in planning. You are annoying staff. You are causing inefficiency. So don't do it. Do a better job of planning. Do a better job of supervision and get it done in the field. And then you will be doing it in the most efficient and effective way. So, thanks for listening.